Here we go. Upon eligibility determination for HCBW services, the individual would self-determine, and this again is using a voucher system and or their conservator, all aspects of their support only limited by the value of the voucher and the availability of the desired support or service. That would be the intent. From my perspective, that's what I would like to see. A voucher system would set the stage for a highly competitive environment where family, friends, independent contractors, and provider agencies would vie for the business of the voucher holder. It's called capitalism. If you were an HCBW recipient, would you like the voucher system? I'll speak for myself. Yes, give me the voucher system. I want to be able to get my supports from whomever I want, when I want, and where I want. That would be my preference. Okay, now this references what I had said before. Unlike the wording of promulgated laws, rules, policies that are written to hold people accountable for compliance, the new settings HCBW rule is value-based. So that when people said, well, what does that mean? Well, we don't have a definition. You know, like what is community like, or what does accessible mean? I mean, we don't have, it could say, like for accessible, it says it has to meet universal design standards. There is actually architectural standards called universal design, but it doesn't. It doesn't have clarity, and that's intentional. It's not an oversight. They've intentionally designed it that way without operational definition. Consequently, words such as integrated, because you saw that word a number of times, integrated, we don't have a definition for integrated. Participation, these are all words I pulled right out. Inclusive, privacy, generic, options, choice, community, can only be assessed in the context of person-centered orientation. So it is in light of that individual, where they live, and those factors. That causes people anxiety, by the way, because you're not given direct guidance, and am I making the right decision, you know, kind of thing. There is no black or white, is the best way to say it when it comes to this final rule. Okay, this is really important. I'm glad we had the opportunity to get to this point. We'll obviously be able to go further. I shared with you originally that the final rule is based upon values, not specific regulations. Here are the values of the final rule. And the rest of my presentation, if you were with me for the next 2 days, because it's really a 2-day presentation, I take each of those values and we look at them, and I show you pictures of all those values. What does it in fact look like, that value? The first one is free from restraint, assure privacy, choice of provider, choice of setting, generic supports, which is really interesting. The word generic means general, so that we want people to be able to get their support the same way you and I get it. What resources are in the community to support that person rather than having specialized supports? Like right now, if somebody needed glasses, I'll give you an example, and they break their glasses with some frequency, a provider will say, well, Medi-Cal won't pay for their glasses again. You can only get glasses every 3 years or something. Well, generic support would be you pick up the phone, you call the Lions Club, and they'll buy glasses for that person. That's what the Lions Club does. That's a generic support. Any of us in this room could use Lions Club to get glasses. Not just restricting yourself. It means getting food. If you don't have enough money, going to a food pantry to get food. People who don't have a lot of money. It means if you can't afford new clothes, you go to a, what do you call it, like a secondhand, or whatever you call those places, like Goodwill. Yeah, Goodwill to get your clothes. Those are all generic supports. And we historically have not utilized those the way they could be. They allow people to be part of their community when you access those generic supports. Excuse me, my back's to you here. Non-regimented routines, respect and dignity, accessible settings, right, we talked about that, integrated life, and inclusionary opportunities. What is the difference between integration and inclusion? Integration is having a physical presence. Inclusion is the relationships that you form as a result of having that physical presence. Many of our folks have an integrated day. They do not have an inclusive day because they are not supported in forming valued relationships with other people, right? Okay, free from unnecessary restraint. So let's take a look at this. There are 4 types of restraint: physical, mechanical, chemical, and environmental. And I would just tell you that we use chemical restraints excessively. If you ask providers, do they? They will say no. But in fact, we come up with many cockamamie kind of diagnoses that are not true. So we have a lot of folks with autism who have some very significant sensory issues, and they can become very frenetic. They can become exit obsessed and start to run out. And the next thing you know, they get a diagnosis of intermittent explosive disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, which they don't have. And they give them these diagnoses in order to justify a medication, because there is no medication for behavior. There is no medication for behavior. All medication has to be prescribed based upon a specific diagnosis. A physician or psychiatrist can do what's called a differentiated diagnosis. Say, I'm not really sure what's wrong with the person, but I think it could be this. I'm going to give them that medication. Like, I think they have a bipolar disorder. I may not be sure. So I'm going to prescribe lithium. I give them the lithium, and their depression is improved, and their manic state is improved. Guess what? I put the right key in the right lock. So you don't have to have an initial diagnosis, but we use a lot of chemical restraint, but most providers will say they don't, but they really do. And we use a lot of environmental types of restraints and control. Put that down. Where are you going? Leave that alone. That's an environmental staff trying to control people, right? Restraint, though, is neither good nor bad. Obviously, it depends upon how, why, and where it is used. I mean, people have ataxia and they jerk forward. My gosh, if I didn't give them a seat belt, they would fall out of their wheelchair. I mean, you know, and sometimes people have very poor body posturing and they'll slump over, and they may have to have some kind of restraint to help hold their upper torso in place, or they'll slump over. So restraint is neither good nor bad. It's how it's used and why it's used. And this will become a big deal as we move forward and so forth. So I'll just go. I mean, there's literally so many of these kind of things, but this will give you an essence of the type of things we have to deal with as we deal with the waiver. It is always frequently difficult, if not impossible, to know the purpose of a restraint by merely looking at it. So I can't look at a restraint. No, somebody's wearing a helmet. I don't know if they're wearing that helmet because they have drop seizures and we want to keep them from injuring their head, or are they wearing the helmet because they have self-injurious behavior and they're banging their head. You can't tell what a restraint is for just by looking at it. You have to, understand the purpose and for that individual. In all instances, the use of restraint requires the review, assessment by trained and experienced clinicians and professionals to assure appropriate use. That's the point. You just can't have some staff saying, gee, we think this is a good idea. You just don't want to do that. Whenever restraint is authorized, it is essential that it is consistent, again, this thing got corrupted, with all policy and regulatory requirements. This is an example of environmental restraint. I don't want you out of that chair. You sit there until I tell you to get up. I mean, horrible stuff like that, right? Staff highly controlling vocalizations. And a mechanical restraint is any device that impairs bodily movement. Look at this one. And whenever I take these photos, I always get permission. And people say, well, why in the world would anyone give you, when you see some of the photos, they're beyond horrible, horrible. You say, why would anybody give you permission? Well, that's because the people don't understand even what they're doing wrong. They were really proud of this. They have the seatbelt reversed and they tied the guy down and the ties are in the back and he can't get out of the chair. Well, they're really proud of that because now he can't get out. They see it as something positive, right? And is this person secure or behaviorally restrained? Neither explanation is acceptable. Or I'll see somebody who has a really large tray on their wheelchair. I mean, very large. And I realize, hey, that tray's so large, it extends their reach. He is an individual that either pinches people or is hitting people. What they did is they got a really large tray so he can't reach anybody. Now you have to be, because I've been doing this so long, I'm able to figure that out. Clearly a mechanical restraint because they're not dealing with his conduct. Why is he doing that? Let's address his unmet need, not just restrain him. I'm a neologist, by the way. A neologist is somebody who makes up words. I make up a lot of words. And no, they're called neologisms. I have to, because the things that go on in our industry, there are no words truly to describe them. So I have all these words, like habaloney. It's a word that means habilitation. It's absolute baloney, habaloney. I mean, because you see the things, the ridiculous things, these sensory rooms, where, ridiculous stuff that people do. Put a bunch of people in a room with a bunch of Christmas tree lights blinking off and on, throwing people into seizures, and they somehow think that has value. I mean, okay, now, here's another example of mechanical restraints. Look at that one. This is classic. You'll see that every regional center will support that. They put the brakes in the back of the chair.
They do?
Of course. Absolutely. I will bet you there are 10,000 people in this state who use wheelchairs that are permanently mechanically restrained because the brakes are in the back of the chair. I will see, I can't tell you how many people next week. And by the way, we're the rightist. We're all these rights people. You don't hear them speak up. By the way, does that person have a service coordinator? I won't say what state this is from, but do they have a service coordinator? Of course. Does the service coordinator know the person's mechanically restrained? Of course they know it. What do they do about it? Nothing. Look at that. Again, taking the seatbelt and tying it so the individual can't undo it. Even Houdini himself couldn't get out. Gee, I really wish we had like 2 days and I can go through hundreds of pictures in all these various areas with you. They're like really cool. This one's really interesting. It's hard to figure out what it is. I had no other way. What it is this individual had SIB, self-injurious behavior, and you'll see how severe here in a moment. And they designed a plexiglass device that slides over the arms of the wheelchair and locks in place. His hands and arms go underneath. He's free to move them and he can see them, but he can't bring them up to do anything to his face. It is part of the plan. This plexiglass, there are people who say don't do that. Read the point. This plexiglass restraint was designed for a young man who engages in extreme self-injurious behavior. He has blinded himself in one eye. Oh, the rightists, they don't care. They want him to blind himself in the other eye. You can't do that. They don't care. I'm not being negative. I'm just telling you the truth, okay? He has blinded himself in one eye, knocked out several teeth, and caused serious damage to his ears. Many alternatives were attempted to address his needs and thus eliminate the SIB. Unfortunately, none were successful. This restraint allows him to see his hands, move them freely within the plexiglass area, and manipulate items. Now, do we want to do that? No. But if that is the least restrictive alternative to keep him safe, because anytime I look at anybody, I do not see him. That's me. That's me. And I want to know what you're going to, but at the same time, we have a moral, ethical, legal, and professional obligation to figure out why he is doing that and address those unmet needs to eliminate his self-injurious behavior. But until we do that, we got to keep him safe. That's my opinion. Very few people agree with me. So a mechanical device, again, can be to impairs bodily movement. We can do it for positioning and body alignment, as we talked about. This is really great. This is really good. This is an individual who has cerebral palsy. They are in the system. They have normal intelligence, and they are so ataxic that they've literally have broken their hands and their knuckles and they fling them out throughout the door. The occupational therapist came up with this medical protective device that keeps the individual from flaying. You've seen people that's so severe they flay out. They'll get through a door and they'll bust their hands open. That's me. Please do that for me. This is an excellent example of a mechanical restraint used for purposes of positioning as a medical protective device. This individual, as a result of his cerebral palsy, engages in severe extension and flailing arms. That movement has resulted in injury to his arms by hitting the door frames and walls. This restraint keeps him safe. Again, documented. I would only do this if it was ordered by a physician and reviewed and designed by an OT. And reviewed at least every 6 months. And Since he has normal intelligence and can provide informed consent, I would only do it with that individual's support. If he is indifferent about his hands being broken, as long as he has informed consent, go for it. Break your hands. And as a medical protective device, we just said, here's another example, medical protective. This one we cannot do. We cannot use mechanical restraint. All the regional centers prohibit it. This is when somebody might be aggressive and you put them in a restraint chair as an aversive consequence, unpleasant, to decrease the frequency and/or intensity of the behavior. Licensing doesn't allow that. It's not allowed in the state. We used to do that a lot, but we don't do that anymore. And for crisis, we are not allowed to do that either. Psychiatric hospitals and nursing homes will do that. Some guy comes in a state because he's on drugs, and it takes 5 policemen to bring him into an emergency room. They'll put him in a camisole, a straitjacket, or a 5-point prone restraint in a papoose board. We cannot do that. It can be done in psychiatric environments. That's an example for crisis. You've seen that, where your arms are like this, where somebody is just out of control and trying to either break out all the windows or seriously injure people. That is a restraint for a 5, goes on an ankle or a wrist, 5-point prone. That's a papoose board. There's the prone restraint. I was an assistant superintendent of 2 large state psychiatric hospitals. We did this a lot. And then chemical restraint, we do far too much of that. It'll be really interesting to see as we get into these values with the final rule, what's going to happen to all these restraints that we use. Chemical restraints are any form of psychoactive medication used not to treat illness, but to intentionally inhibit a particular behavior or movement. The right drug doesn't fix the wrong environment. Isn't it interesting that we had people come out of Lanterman Developmental Center, Agnews, whatever, who had been on psychotropic medication for decades, cocktails of it, had huge number of incidences of aggression and property destruction. They move out of Lanterman Developmental Center, and then they move into a home where they have now only 2 housemates, and for the first time in their life, they have their own bedroom. Watch what happens to their conduct. It'll improve demonstrably. If you really have intermittent explosive disorder, it doesn't improve because you have a new bedroom. There are people with traumatic brain injury who truly have intermittent explosive disorder. The environment might make it worse, but it's not going to fix it because it's the way the brain is. So most of those kind of diagnoses, they're just trumped up. They're made up. They're not real. They do that in order to put them on medication. Drugs treat disorders, not behaviors. This is interesting. Look at drugs used on aggression in those with low IQ provide no benefit, study says. The drugs most widely used to manage aggressive outbursts in intellectually disabled people, I know it's not people first language, are no more effective than placebos for most patients and may be less so, research report. In the study, Dr. Peter Tyler, a professor of psychiatry at Imperial College London, led a research team who assigned 86 people from ages 18 to 65 to one of 3 groups, one that received Risperdal, one that received a generic form of Haldol, and one that was given a placebo pill. Caregivers tracked the participants' behavior. Unexpectedly, those in the placebo group improved the most significantly. Yike. This is my opinion. I believe 60% of all the people who we support who have a primary diagnosis of an intellectual disability and a secondary diagnosis that's psychiatric, 60% of them have no reason to be on any psychotropic. That's my opinion. Physical restraint. Physical restraint is any time a person's body impairs the bodily movement of another. See, it's very different than mechanical restraint. And all agencies use physical restraint because there's many types and reasons for physical restraint. We have physical restraint to improve developmental competence. Somebody can't pick up a spoon. You'll watch me, can't pick up the spoon. So I stand behind them and I put my hand over their hand using graduated guidance to guide their hand, shape, fade out, get the spoon to their mouth. That's physical restraint. I'm controlling the movement of their hand. I'm doing that for developmental purposes. It is physical restraint. To protect from harm. Somebody's slapping their face. I take my arm and block their hand so they don't hit their head. That's physical restraint. Prone physical restraint. We used to do that a lot. We've really faded out of that. Here is an interesting term. It's an oxymoron. I'm going to take you down to the ground, but it is therapeutic. A therapeutic hold. I mean, impairing another's bodily movements by using your own. And again, to enhance developmental competence, protect from harm. To consequate behavior, we can't do that. That would be like overcorrection procedures, where I would require someone to have to clean an entire wall, kind of thing, when I take their hand and demand that they do some kind of excessive kind of movement. What's interesting is that our courts do that to people all the time. Some guy will throw trash out the window and the state police will pick him up, and the court will say, you have to pick up all trash between mile markers 10 and mile markers 20. Right? It's an overcorrection procedure. He's not required just to pick up the trash you threw out the window. He had to pick up all the trash because that's considered aversive. To consequate behavior, and then to achieve a medical outcome. We do that all the time. Somebody has contractures, and we have to do range of motion, extension. That's physical restraint for the purposes of a medical outcome. Or somebody's hand is in this position, and we have an exercise where the staff have to take their fingers and open their hand and extend them. That's physical restraint for a medical outcome. So when somebody says physical restraint is bad, what are you going to say? Depend on why you're using it and how is it approved. Next value, privacy. The state of being free of public attention. The ability of an individual to seclude themselves or information about themselves. We are really weak on this because privacy is a lot more than what you might think. Privacy helps us establish boundaries to limit who has access to our bodies, places, and things. It is fundamental right, essential to autonomy and the protection of human dignity, serving as the foundation upon which many other human rights are built. Privacy is essential to who we are as human beings. So here's a whole series of photos. And these are indications of how privacy is violated. And you'll notice in this particular case, this is a bedroom, and the shades are designed to only go down halfway. In this instance, I am in the car, parked on the street. I can literally see through the window, and the person was getting ready to get up in the morning. They were dressing, and the shades weren't closed. What do you think of this? This is a home where they don't even have doors on the bedrooms, no doors. The rationale, we can keep an eye on these people. No doors. I'm not making it up. I mean, this is the picture. And I said, can I take a picture of that? They were really proud of that. You come up with that one, that's good. This is common. You see those things? They never work. They break off all the time, and that is as far as it will go. And all the neighbors can see through the window. I mean, home after home after home after home. I mean, and everybody knows it. It's not like you're hiding it. Make sure you have your pajamas on because the neighbors have a very good view. Why would this type of window covering be used in a home where individuals tend to be destructive? Privacy, look at that one. Paul, Derek, and David. This is on the refrigerator. Toilet at 2:30 a.m. every night, no exceptions. Who's David? It's me. Until you are in a position to say, that's you, you're likely not going to get it. That's you. How will my wife feel if I put that on the refrigerator to let the staff know when I'm gone that they need to wake her up and put her in the toilet, and our daughters and grandchildren come in and her name is on the refrigerator like that? How would she feel? By the way, did service coordinators go in there? Was there quality assurance from the regional center? Were their parents in the house? Of course. But they're children in adult bodies. That's okay. I'm coming to the house probably about 6 in the morning. I drive up to the driveway. The office for the home manager is in the garage. The door is totally open. None of the filing cabinets have locks on them, and it's all the individual records. Come on, neighbors, come on in. We want you to take a look at everything. Just leave the garage door open. This is in a coat room, like off a mudroom. As you can see, the individual's records are there, fully accessible to everybody. Probably I can go into 90% of all day support environments and homes that have made a decision not to have electronic records, and their records are accessible to everybody. That's what they'll commonly do. And I know this is a liberal state, but you still have to follow HIPAA, sorry. Look at this one. Someone broke into the file cabinet, so now they just put all the records on top of the file cabinet. And again, we're going back to privacy, right? Privacy, privacy, there is no privacy. This is in the dining room. And they were, so can I take a picture of that? You know why they were so proud of that? Easily accessible to the staff. They can do the data, right? Data. And then they said, well, there's nothing personal in there. Recording people's conduct is not personal? Obviously, all involved seem to be unaware of HIPAA requirements, which mandate securing such personal information. Choice of provider, here we go. It can be a not-for-profit, for-profit, sectarian, non-sectarian, governmental, or quasi-governmental. The provider can be a professionally trained friend, relative, spouse, parent, brother, or sister. And the HCBW standard is that the waiver recipient can choose both the organization they wish to provide them, the staff, as well as the staff hired or contracted by the organization. I don't think I have any pictures of this one. Choice of setting. Next value. People can choose where they wish to live. Came out twice there somehow. Perhaps their choice of setting is a cabin in the woods, cottage on the lake, mobile home in a mobile home park. I will tell you, it's my experience, it's some of the best quality of life for the people who we support is in a mobile home park. Their dog runs with the dog next door. They tend to sit out in the evening chatting softly with the neighbors. They do their laundry at the laundry mobile home park, interacting with other people, and there's less of a discrepancy between socioeconomic status. The majority of our people are living in multi-million-dollar homes, and they're impoverished. How many poor people do you know can live in $1.5 million home? But that's what we do. That's the system. And by the way, they can't belong to the same country club as their neighbors. And then we wonder why they don't have relationships. Apartment, condominium, extended family home, that is the #1 direction we're going. Cooperative living, shared living, extended family homes. I would say probably 80% of all residential supports in the state of Colorado are in extended family homes. 80%. And every state is growing that. You have that system here, by the way. Shared living arrangement, parent or other family home. Where would you like to live? We all want to live someplace where we're treated with dignity and respect. That's the bottom line. The current service system is commonly characterized by finding people for places. We do a much better job of finding people for places than places for people, right? Somebody moves out of the home or passes away, the provider says, hey, Kern Regional Center, you got somebody you can put in here? A day program provider has a vacancy. Hey, Kern, you got somebody you can put in here? We do a much better job of finding people for places than places for people. Which is not person-centered, obviously. This is interesting. Somebody came up to me when my mother was living, and they said, Tom, how's your mom doing? Well, I said, well, thank you very much for asking. I think she'd like to hear from you. Why don't you give her a call? She's at home. Several years later, my mom is in assisted living. Same person comes up to me and says, Tom, how's your mother doing? I said, well, thank you very much for asking. I'm sure she'd like to hear from you. Why don't you give her a call? She's in a home. 2 little words, at home versus in a home. And it's my experience that most of the people we support are in a home, not at home. And that's what the waiver's trying to change, right? Without the resident's permission, did the staff answer the doorbell? That will be the first thing that I will look at when I come to a home. I'll knock on the door. Who comes to answer the door? Who answers the door at your home? Your butler, James? But there are staff who actually will come to the door. They answer the door. Don't point your finger at that staff. They have a supervisor. I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating. Don't point your finger at the supervisor. The supervisor has a supervisor. It's the culture of that home. That's how they decided to run it. The person doesn't have a right to answer the door, especially if they use a wheelchair. Holy mackerel. And you don't speak, then I guarantee you're not going to be allowed to answer the door. And some homes get it, where the staff will, come on, let's go get to the door. And they'll have the person, turn the wheels to their wheelchair. Let's see who's there, right? Other homes where the staff doesn't see it as their home. Who opens the mail? I will see staff go into people's bedrooms and sit on their bed. With my daughters. All my daughters live close. I can't imagine going into their home and just walking into their bedroom without ever asking permission and just go sit on a bed. We don't do that, but you'll see staff do that because that's the culture of that agency. Or enter their bedrooms without permission. People who are in a home rather than at home cannot keep their personal items in the living room because they're stolen or broken. They have to keep them. Can you imagine you'd have to keep everything in your bedroom because you're concerned what other people are going to do? This is wonderful. This, to me, this is called a marker. A marker are those things in the environment that says, boy, that's really good, that's great. The individual feels comfortable enough to keep their jigsaw puzzle on a card table in the living room, knowing that no one's going to disturb it. See, that's a real positive thing. Most people can't do that. Home, the story of who we are and a collection of all the things we love. Is there a defense or retort that can be made in response to these provocative statements? Group homes are a form of homelessness. They are pretend simulated homes. Group homes are islands in a neighborhood where the residents are marooned. Group homes lead to compromises either necessitated for the collective good or to meet regulatory demands that most of us would perceive as an insult. Whenever you're ready, what's the defense? There is none. Oh, I like this one. It gets heavy at the end. Each of us has a unique understanding of what makes a residence a home. A place where I feel loved. A place where I can express my individuality. A place that provides me with a feeling of security. A place where my belongings and possessions are safe. A place that I take pride in. A place that is always there to go back to. A retreat. A place that I call my own. A place that I share with family and friends. A place where I determine my rhythms and activities. Right? Licensing's not going to make that happen. Good people cause good things to happen. Check the items owned by residents in their group home that are in the living room. What's really fascinating is we talk about individualization, and we're always encouraging people to have individualization in their bedroom, so you will see pictures of family and so forth. How many group homes do you think I go into where I'll see pictures of their family in the living room? But most of us have family pictures in the hall, in your living room. You may even put them on a magnet of your grandkids on the refrigerator. But historically, we've expected people to keep their items in their bedroom. The final rule says, can't do that anymore. Remember, it's your home. You put your things anywhere that you want. Freedom to decorate and furnish their own sleeping and living areas. As is true for you and me, we may choose to display religious artifacts in our living room, political signs in our front yard. We talked about that one. That's going to get interesting. A loved one's funeral ashes in the great room. How many homes do you think I've been in where the people who live in the home have their parents' ashes in the home? Never. And I don't mean this for any degree of braggadocio. You will never meet anyone who has been in as many homes as I have. Thousands and thousands. I have my sister's ashes in my home. If I have a group of 40 people, I'll bet you at least 5 of them will have somebody's family's ashes in their home. But not the people we support. Why? Because a 3-year-old wouldn't have somebody's ashes. They're children, right? An accent wall painted in a variety of psychedelic, mind-blowing colors. Sexual revealing paintings or artistic photos. If your housemates are indifferent to these personal displays, what gives your landlord the right? Remember, that's all that person is the landlord. You are not to do that. Now, we have individuals who have serious forensic histories. It's one of my areas of expertise. People with IDD who have histories of pedophilia, pyromania, rape, and some of these people who have histories of pedophilia, we cannot have them just put any pictures on the wall of little children. And if the staff says you can't put that up there, staff can't say that, right? It has to be agreed to in their plan that that picture can't go up. It can't be some staff saying you can't do that. It has to be in the ISP in terms of those kind of decisions, unless specified in the lease or in the individualized support plan. A group home residence where the inhabitants maintain all their life's possessions in one half a bedroom. Historically, that has been true because people share bedrooms, right? Oh, this is good, I keep it going. I do it my way. This is cool. Look at that. I go into this home, it had a great kitchen, and the guy showed me around his home, and he has a regular full-size refrigerator in his bedroom. And I said, well, why do you have a refrigerator in your bedroom? He said, well, I like to drink sodas at night, and it's too far to go into the kitchen. But you'd find many providers who would say, you can't put that refrigerator in your bedroom. And of course he can put a refrigerator. He paid for the refrigerator. He's paying for what's in it. The guy works part-time. But again, you'd have providers who say, we can't do that here. Though the man who resides in this apartment has a complete kitchen with a similar refrigerator, he decided he also wanted a refrigerator in his bedroom. As unusual as that may be, it was never challenged. If you want a refrigerator in your bedroom, could you put it there? Well, of course. This is another really good one for decorating. And I thought this was great. So often people will take their Special Olympic trophies and medals and they keep them in their bedroom. Look what the residents of this home did. They put them all together across the mantel on the fireplace. And I was like really impressed with that. But this is really good. This is great. This is a guy with cerebral palsy, probably about 55 years old, and he's just thumbing his nose at the world, man. He's got Mickey Mouse on the floor and all those posters on the wall, and it's hilarious. And again, the word I would use is kitsch. You familiar with the word kitsch? New York Times uses the word. It's sort of in, cool, hot, tight, funny kind of thing, kitsch. Kitsch is when people decorate their home retro 1950s sort of kitsch. And this is sort of kitsch. But there were a lot of places that I would go to that the provider would say, you can't do that. What do you think of that? I was impressed. That's the guy's bed. He spent a lot of time doing that too. He had like almost every square inch in that bedroom covered. This bedroom strongly communicates who this man is. I don't even have to meet him and I know who he is. And that's the whole point of individualization. And the less capable and competent the person is, the more important that is. I can tell you who I am. I can tell you my religion, my family, and everything. But when you don't speak and you lack significant cognitive ability, that room needs to speak for you.
Yeah.
The home administrator and staff nurtured and encouraged his expression of individuality, which I thought was cool. Here's another really good one. This guy has autism, and he had real obsession with school buses. You know, he'd stand out looking at them out of the window, and they would go by, and he would collect school buses. And the staff, really cool. So what they did was they had this thing built, and he get to keep all the school buses, and now it is a true collection, as the way maybe any adult would do it. And I'm not bothered by it at all, because he has a crucifix and he has that whole collage of family pictures. It's not what people have. Please listen to this. It's not what people have, it's what they don't. I have no problem with somebody having an item that's age inappropriate, as long as it's buried in the context of having many things of meaning and value in your life. I collect what are called penny tops, these antique wooden tops from like the 1800s. You put string around them, throw on the floor. Businesses used to give them away for advertisement, and then they sold them, places sell them for a penny. I have baskets of these things. My wife calls them dust catchers. They're intended solely for children. But if you came into my bedroom, you would never go away thinking a child lives there. I have pictures of all my grandchildren. I have books stacked on a table that I am reading. I have 2 legal pads writing the next article. I have certificates on the wall and things that people have given me for activities I've been involved in. I have religious artifacts. The fact that I have a bunch of toy tops says nothing. It's just something I'm interested in. It's not what people have, it's what they don't. Generic supports means supports and services that are widely accepted and available for use by the general public. Relating to or descriptive of an entire group or class or general. I just put this up here. The role of support staff is not to provide support, but to help people obtain it. Did you know that all grocery stores under federal law have to have an assistive shopper? Did you know that? Federal law. You ever heard of the law? It's called ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. If I am blind and I have a guide dog, as smart as my dog is, it can't figure out the difference between a can of ham and beans and bacon and beans. Sorry. In order for that grocery store to be accessible to me, I need someone who's going to help me buy my groceries. It has to be accessible, and it's just not physically accessible. Guess what? We have staff that will take people to the grocery store and help them buy their groceries because they don't understand that the role of support staff is not to assist that person. It is to help them to connect to the generic supports in that grocery store so that they can be more independent. All banks are required under federal law to assist their customers in balancing their checking account. If you have dementia, Alzheimer's, the bank has to provide you that service. But yet we have staff who balance people's checking account because they don't understand that they need to help them connect with the bank, and that's a service, generic supports. Specifically in the final rule, because we've cut people off from that larger community system. Natural supports are professional associations and relationships typically developed in the community that enhance the quality and security of life for people, including but not limited to family relationships, friendships, reflecting the diversity of the neighborhood and the community. So certainly family is a generic support. And I'm going to leave you with my mantra. Are you ready? Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is your best. Got it? Thank you. To all of you.